and today I will be reading to you from Sticky Notes and Trinkets by RainbowStar_772. That's me! Anyway, now on to Chapter 2, Call-Outs and Being Called On. America just watched, surprised that their teacher wasn't really retaliating. Though, he had to admit, it was a bit cathartic to see the teacher be snapped back at. Mr. Weatherly had been antagonistic towards him for the entire year so far, and he wasn't really certain why. He hadn't done anything, as far as he knew. He'd just done his work and scored high in the class. He didn't say anything, just hoped that the teacher wouldn't take being called out on him. He watched quietly as Russia, the person who had made it fully clear that he did not like him, nor want to interact with him, got the stuff that Mr. Weatherly wanted to hold him after class to get. As per usual, the teacher was making a mountain out of a molehill, as all he needed to do was hand over a packet of paper and the textbook. The packet of paper was presumably a syllabus. The rest of the class went on fairly normally until the teacher started asking questions to make sure that they knew what the topic about was. Instead of leaving America alone, he started picking on him, saying stuff like, "You have the highest grades in the class. Can you answer this?" Or, "How about you, America?" when he hadn't raised his hand. His voice was also so very condescending whenever he was addressed. God, America wanted to leave, simply not exist in that room. The worst part was that if he didn't answer, the teacher would put the pressure on him even more, making him feel like a failure if he didn't speak. So he simply forced himself to respond. Every time getting a, "Could you speak up a bit? I couldn't hear you." Even though all he'd done was stutter, he was fully comprehensible otherwise. When the teacher had pulled the stunt on him about 3 times, he heard someone speak up. He hadn't been expecting anyone to, but was even more surprised that it was Russia speaking up. As far as he could tell, Russia hated him. "Are you fucking deaf? The little shit is answering you very clearly. Just move on with the class." America relaxed himself a little. Luckily, the teacher listened to that. He was a bit disappointed Russia didn't use his name, but was thankful the other stepped in. He guessed that it showed how little the other liked him. Maybe he could get the other to view him more positively. Maybe he could make small gifts for the other and such. Maybe he could put them in his locker. He wasn't quite sure the other would take them. He didn't want another person who'd physically harm him. That's what happened with someone he thought was a friend. He'd sent them a blanket and given it to them. Instead of thanking him for the gift, they'd punched him and gone off at him for having such a girly hobby. He didn't really have a reason to think that Russia would be like that, but he didn't want to find out, so that was the safer option. He'd tell Russia it was him when he found out that the other didn't hate him. Or maybe when he could find out that the other didn't mind girly hobbies, like sewing and knitting. There was also the possibility that he'd never tell them. He'd have to give himself a deadline if he ever planned to say anything. But he decided he should play that by ear. If he felt safe to tell him, he'd tell Russia at the end of the year. He grabbed a bracelet he'd been planning on giving to Russia directly, but supposed putting it in his locker would be fine. He'd have to see where that was first. It'd likely be a bit, since the other wouldn't stop by if what he said earlier was true. He could wait. He was patient. He was patient and so very quiet. Possibly too quiet, if his classmates, siblings, teachers, and friends were to be believed. Though he had to politely disagree with all of them, sure that his choice of silence was mainly out of crippling anxiety that made reaching out to another person feel so very, very scary, and so very hard to do. But he preferred to think of it as a preference for the serene and quiet. He could only fool his classmates, family, and everyone else, but never himself. The quiet left too much time to think, to reflect on how much of a screw-up he was. He snapped himself from that thought, slipping a hand up his sleeve and snapping a rubber band against his arm, reprimanding himself for that thought. He was trying to get himself better about not thinking about that. Those thoughts could easily send him into a downward spiral. And he knew those tended to hurt his family, as they were noticeable to them. He shook himself away from those thoughts, hoping this class would come to an end soon. Eventually, the bell rang, and all of his classmates got out of their chairs. Mr. Weatherly was trying to keep everyone from leaving with the logic of, the bell doesn't dismiss you, I do. America, personally, didn't like the idea of spending more time around the originally black-haired teacher who was going gray. So he opted to get up and silently follow what his classmates were doing. He grabbed his bag and walked out of the room quietly, looking around for a second to spot Russia. He wanted to see if he'd get to find the other locker, or if he was out of luck. He watched as Russia stopped by a locker, opened it, put the textbook in it, and once Russia had closed it, he got a look at which one it was so he could go by it later. He looked at the number on it before going off into his next class. He stopped by his own locker, knowing that he'd have some time to do so before the next class. He put the books from his previous class in his locker and took out the ones he needed for his next class, putting them in his bag before starting off to class, though he felt someone's eyes on him while he retrieved the books. He couldn't tell what the intention of the person looking at him had, but he knew he didn't like being perceived. He didn't like the uncertainty he felt while the person was looking at him. He quickly got out of the area, really wanting to get away from that area. He made it to his next class and slid into his seat quietly, wanting to draw as little attention to himself as possible. He got out his book for the class and the homework, which he'd already done in class the day before. And that's the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed. Anyway, I'd like to invite you to join the Discord, which is linked down in the description below. That being said, I hope you have a nice rest of your day, night, or whatever it is for you. Just enjoy your time. And I will see you tomorrow.